Johanna, Siri, Mo, Lydia, Christian, Nathan, people of God, grace, mercy, and peace be with you this day. Amen. One of my son's friends and his spouse are farmers. We just bought a bunch of their free-range chickens. He grew up in the city, went to college, went to Southwest High School, Gustavus Adolphus College, and then he and his wife decided to become farmers. There was an article in the Star Tribune this last week about how hard it is for young people to get into farming. Some of you probably saw that. Anyway, Alex and his spouse, they use this interesting approach to raise their chickens. The chicken coop is mobile, so that the natural fertilizer, the manure, that comes from the chickens can be spread throughout a large piece of land by moving the chickens around. Apparently, if chickens stay in the same spot all the time, it's bad for the soil. That's what I was told. Not an expert. These particular chickens were helping to fertilize a grove of hazelnut trees. These days, nurturing the soil, keeping the good soil good, so to speak, might be a helpful metaphor for all of life. Early last fall, I was fairly new here at Calvary as I was getting to know the group of students who would participate in the affirmation of baptism, last year's class. I think all of them are here today. There was some immediate high-pressure lobbying going on. They recognized that I was new, that I was vulnerable. They were going to come after me and work me pretty good. They said, I don't want to do a faith statement. I'm like, what's that? Neither do I. Do I have to stand up and read a faith statement? Do we have to? And I was like, okay, well, is that a tradition here at Calvary? Yep. And I said, well, we could change it. How about if you write a couple sentences at least, and then we'll have them read. And I've done that in other congregations. I don't know if we even call them faith statements, but we did something like that. And so we agreed to do that. If you don't want to read your own, somebody else can read it. And I think that worked out pretty good, if my memory serves me correct. And I think you'll find that this slight twist on the tradition has continued to evolve positively with this group of wonderful young people as well when they get to sharing their faith statements in a few minutes. There are some common themes in these faith statements, but each is unique. Some are short, some are longer. The one thing that binds all of these faith statements together, along with each of their wonderfully unique giftedness, is the authentic sense of belonging that is reflected in them. A sense of belonging that these 6 young people have here at Calvary. Each of them have been raised in this congregation. That's unique and special. This has been good soil. And it brings us to this gospel reading from Luke. The seeds of faith, they fall where they will. The God who plants those seeds is indiscriminate in the planting, careless even. The seeds get scattered to places where they have no chance of taking root. But do we really know that? Can we? It's not like the ticky-tacky, near-perfect rows of corn that we see throughout rural Minnesota where we can barely tell the difference between one corn stalk and another. No, this kind of planting is free, diverse, and abundant. Faith falls where it will. Rocky soil, the path among weeds, good soil. And the thing is, there is not a single prescription for faith. It's not like there's a manual on how to create or do faith. There's not a faith app for our smartphone. Okay, well, maybe there is. Let's pretend there's not. This is not going to surprise you. But when the pastor talks with young people about faith, there's lots of talk about doubt, about biblical contradictions, about the seeming disunity between faith and fact. You name it. So what is the response to doubt? What do we do with it? One response to doubt is certainty. Some believe that their eternal security is dependent on an unwavering acceptance of a particular set of fundamental beliefs. There is no room for wonder. There is only defiance in the face of any alternative view. In this response to doubt, we don't rail against God. We don't doubt the existence of God because there is an explanation for everything. No inconsistencies. God has a plan, and there's always someone ready to tell you what it is. Another response to doubt, less rigid than certainty, certainly, is clarity. The inconsistencies of faith or of the Bible are not dismissed, nor are they embraced. But we can try to explain them or make sense of them, interpret them together. This was the tradition that I grew up in, and it is still a big part of our tradition in the church, in this church. Ideas matter, including ideas about God. The search for clarity allows us to struggle with doubt, especially when it isn't attached to some crisis like the beast of grief. But clarity can never be imposed on anyone. It can only be offered with gentleness. But then there is something to add to clarity. And that is acceptance. You know that Ghanaian song we sometimes sing? I might just ruin it for you now. Let us talents and tongues employ. Lovely song. There is that line that makes me bristle, and I bet I'm not alone. Now God sends us all out, strong in faith, free of doubt. Really? Are we ever free of doubt? Doubt is a part of faith. It never goes away. And the reason we can live with doubt is because we are part of a community. We don't do faith alone, including the doubt part of our faith. When we talked about faith statements as a group, we talked about how, for many of us, belonging may be a more powerful force than believing. When we affirm our faith, we affirm our belonging to Christ and our belonging to one another. We need each other. As we will hear in the affirmation of baptism, faith is also a call to live beyond ourselves for the sake of others. So, Calvary has served as good soil for so many of us, including these 6 gifted children of God who affirmed their doubts along with their faith in the affirmation of baptism in the midst of this community to which they belong. What does it mean to belong to Christ in baptism? Just look around this room. That's why we're here. And even here, it's not always good. Sometimes the word offends us and turns us off. Sometimes the word seems far off and irrelevant and is unable to penetrate our pain or our grief. Sometimes, let's face it, the preacher is pretty much in his or her own little bubble and full of mumbo jumbo. But God continues to scatter seeds of faith. and certainly seeds of belonging. It is good to be here. The soil is good right here. Amen.